Most high achievers hate making mistakes. If you're anything like me, do it right, don't screw it up is a constant soundtrack in the back of your mind. And when a mistake or a bad result does happen, your brain beats you up endlessly for it. And the feeling of cringing embarrassment is almost unbearable. But of course, mistakes and bad results are unavoidable, especially if you want to grow, progress, or do things that you haven't done before. So let me give you a way to feel better about your mistakes. Amy Edmondson is a Harvard Business School professor who specializes in the study of failure. And in the course of her research, she defined a spectrum of causes of failure. And she ranks the spectrum from blameworthy to praiseworthy. So we're going to walk through that spectrum today. And I want you to use these questions to evaluate whatever mistake or bad result has happened. What was the cause of it? And did you make a blameworthy mistake or did you actually make a praiseworthy mistake? So the next time you make a mistake or you get a bad result and that tidal wave of cringing embarrassment is hitting you, I want you to pause and consider what kind of mistake you just made using this spectrum. So the first cause on her spectrum, the one that's all the way on the most blameworthy side of the spectrum, is sabotage. And she describes it as an individual chooses to violate a prescribed process or practice. So I want you to ask yourself, did you actively set out to do a bad job? And my guess is no, you didn't wake up today and say, I'm going to totally screw this up. My guess is that you were sincerely trying to get a good result, so you can rule out this most blameworthy kind of failure, the most blameworthy kind of mistake. The second type cause of failure on Amy Edmondson's spectrum, it's a little one notch up from in terms of being blameworthy. This one she calls inattention, which she defines as an individual inadvertently deviates from specifications. So I want you to ask yourself, did you miss something that you know that you shouldn't miss, that you don't typically miss? Maybe you always set aside time to review your notes before a big presentation, but this time you just didn't. Or maybe you always follow your checklist when doing an analysis, but this time you didn't. If this is what happened, no worries. Treat it as a process problem, not as a you problem. You are not lazy or sloppy or inattentive as a human being as a whole. You just had a weird little process failure. So ask yourself, why did that happen? And what can you adjust for next time? The next cause of failure that Amy Edmondson identifies, she calls it inability. And she describes it as an individual doesn't have the skills, conditions, or training to execute a job. I actually like to split this up and think about internal inability versus external inability. So let's talk about internal inability first. To find out if your mistake was caused by internal inability, ask yourself, do you not yet have the skills or ability to do what you want to do? Notice I didn't say, are you a dumbass idiot who can never figure this out? Once again, treat it as a process problem and not as a you problem. No blanket statements about who you are as a person. Look for the specific tactical skill gap that caused this mistake. And once you've taken that I'm an idiot shame blanket off of yourself, I bet that that specific tactical gap is a lot smaller and a lot more fixable than you think. Now, let's talk about external inability. To figure out if that was the cause of your failure, ask yourself, did you not have the external conditions necessary to do what you wanted to do? This is very different from internal inability. I want you to ask, did the mistake happen not because of your own internal skill gaps, but because you weren't set up for success externally? Did you not have enough time or not have enough resources? Or did the partners that you needed to get this done let you down? Was this actually a positioning issue and not a performance issue? And if so, how can you adjust the external conditions for next time? The next cause of failure, now we're tipping over onto the praiseworthy side of things. The next cause of failure that Amy Edmondson identifies, she calls it task challenge. And she describes it as an individual faces a task too difficult to be executed reliably every time. So I might ask yourself, is the thing that you're trying to do just plain freaking hard, such that you can't expect to win 100% of the time? Let me give you some examples. The absolute highest batting average that anyone in MLB history has ever had is .371. That's what's held by catcher Josh Gibson. That means Josh Gibson reached first base 37.1% of the time that he was at bat, which means he failed to reach first base 62.9% of the time when he was at bat. Same thing holds true in tennis. Roger Federer, across all the singles matches he's ever played, won the point that he was playing 54% of the time, and he lost the point he was playing 46% of the time. What I'm trying to tell you is some things are just plain hard. They are so hard that even the best performers only win a small percentage of the time. So I want to ask yourself, is that the reason that you got a bad result? Not because you missed something or you had a skill gap or you weren't set up for success, but just because the thing you're doing is hard enough that you can't actually win 100% of the time. The next cause of failure Amy Edmondson identifies is uncertainty. She describes it as a lack of clarity about future events causes people to take seemingly reasonable actions that produce undesired results. So I want you to ask yourself, was there some kind of genuine unknown that you couldn't have planned for that created the bad result? These are things like if you opened a restaurant in early 2020 and then COVID hit and everyone stayed home. Or you prepared perfectly for a meeting, but then the other person comes in and they're like, change of plans. I actually want to talk about something totally different. In those kinds of situations, you are just a victim of uncertainty. And the insidious thing that your brain will tell you in these moments is you should have known. You should have seen this coming. You somehow should have prepared for this. But you couldn't have known. The mistake or the bad result was caused by the genuine unknowns and uncertainties of life, not by anything that you did. And the final cause of failure that Amy Edmondson identifies, this is the most praiseworthy kind of failure. It's caused by experimentation. She describes it as an experiment conducted to expand knowledge and investigate a possibility leads to an undesired result. So I want to ask yourself, were you just running an experiment and trying something new, and that's the only reason that you made a mistake or got a bad result? And remember, this is actually the most praiseworthy type of failure because it means you were deliberately trying something new and deliberately trying to learn more about how to get the results you want. And if it led to a bad result, that's not you being a screw up. That's just you, just like Thomas Edison, finding one of the 1,000 ways that the light bulb doesn't work, and you're one step closer to finding how the light bulb does work. What matters most isn't that you avoid bad results. What matters most is how you respond to bad results. And most importantly, what matters the most of all is responding to bad results from your flow brain, not from your fear brain. It matters is responding not from fight or flight or shame or anxiety or reactivity, but instead responding from who you are when your protective mechanisms aren't activated, which is what I call your flow brain. Learning how to toggle on demand from your fear brain to your flow brain is the number one thing that I teach my clients how to do. So I want you to come talk to me to learn how to do it. You can drop by anytime for a no strings attached coffee chat. It's not a sales pitch or a sales call, just an opportunity for us to talk about whatever's on your mind, and I'll give you some one-off coaching about your situation. Or you can also book a consult call and we can map out what a full coaching engagement might look like. That way you can not just toggle to your flow brain once, you can practice and master the skill of making that switch again and again until it's locked in for life. The link to book a free consult call is above. Or if you're listening on Instagram, all the links are in my bio, or if you're listening on the podcast, all the links are in the episode description.